No matter how safely you operate your commercial motor vehicle, or CMV, there is always the possibility that you could be involved in an accident. It's hard to imagine a day at work being any worse than being involved in an accident. Drivers who have shared this experience will tell you being involved in an accident can feel surreal. In the immediate aftermath, it's hard to think clearly, hard to know what to do, and hard to remember as a CMV driver what you're required to do. That's why it's important to have a solid understanding of the procedures you need to follow if you're ever involved in an accident. In general, a crash that occurs on any type of roadway, no matter how severe, is typically referred to as an accident. But according to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, or FMCSRs, an accident is any occurrence involving a CMV operating on a highway in interstate or intrastate commerce that involves a fatality, causes an injury serious enough to require immediate medical treatment away from the scene, or results in disabling damage requiring a vehicle to be towed from the scene. A fatality means any injury which results in the death of a person at the time of the accident or within 30 days of the accident. Disabling damage includes vehicles that could have been driven but would have been further damaged if done so. Excluded from the definition of disabling damage is damage which can be temporarily fixed at the scene without special tools or parts, tire disablement without other damage, even if no spare is available, headlamp or taillight damage, and damage to turn signals, horn, or windshield wipers, which makes them inoperative. The term accident does not include incidents involving getting in or out of a parked vehicle, or that involve only the loading or unloading of a vehicle's cargo. Sometimes the term crash is used instead of accident. Both terms have the same meaning. Section 390.15b of the FMCSRs states that a motor carrier must keep an accident register. This register must include, at a minimum, the following information for each accident: date of accident, location, city, town, and state in which the accident occurred, driver name, number of injuries, number of fatalities, and whether hazardous materials other than fuel spilled from the fuel tanks of the motor vehicles involved in the accident were released. The accident register must also include copies of all accident reports required by state or other governmental entities or insurers. The motor carrier must retain all of this information for 3 years after the date of the accident. When the unexpected happens, it is important that you know what to do and what to expect. When an accident occurs, you must deal with immediate problems and gather and report accident information in a timely manner. The following steps can help you accomplish these tasks. Failure to stop or leaving the scene when involved in an accident is a serious offense. So serious that it is listed as a disqualifying offense in Section 383.51 and Section 391.15 of the FMCSRs. As a commercial driver's license, or CDL, holder, if you are convicted of this offense, you are disqualified from operating a CMV for 1 year. In addition to being a disqualifying offense, failure to stop or leaving the scene is against the law and can result in fines and/or jail time. When involved in an accident, remain calm. Get your truck as far off the road as you can, unless doing so will increase the danger, cause additional damage, or inflict injury to you or anyone else at the accident scene. Then, shut off the engine. Turn on your four-way flashers. Set the emergency brake. And check yourself for injuries. See Section 383.51 of the FMCSRs for disqualification details. Next, set out emergency warning devices. Act quickly to help get the scene under control and prevent a bad situation from getting worse. Per the regulations, you have 10 minutes to set out emergency warning devices. To set out warning devices, put on a reflective vest and walk toward oncoming traffic holding the devices in front of you for maximum visibility. Where you place each device depends on where your truck is stopped. If you're in the middle of a traffic lane, the devices should be placed in the center of the lane. If your truck is on the shoulder, place them along the occupied shoulder. 3 bidirectional emergency reflective triangles, 6 fusees, or 3 liquid-burning flares are acceptable warning devices with which a vehicle must be equipped. However, flame-producing devices such as fusees and liquid-burning flares are prohibited on vehicles carrying explosives, a flammable gas, a flammable liquid, or on a motor vehicle using compressed gas as a motor fuel. If you're involved in an accident, it's possible to be injured without initially realizing it because the trauma and the adrenaline rush can affect your thinking. It's important to take a moment and a deep breath to calm yourself, regain control of your emotions, and determine if you or others are hurt. At a minimum, you should call for help. Ask if the other party wants someone contacted and keep him or her warm and dry. If you're able to, keep him or her company until help arrives. Do not move an injured person unless he or she is in immediate danger and you have no other option. Doing too much can be just as dangerous as doing nothing at all. Never attempt to do something you are not trained in. Even if medical assistance isn't needed for injured individuals at the scene of an accident, contacting law enforcement is still required. If you're unable to or are attending to injured persons, ask someone else at the scene to make the call. Be prepared to provide the following information: the exact location of the accident, using mile markers or landmarks if necessary, the number of injured persons and the severity of their injuries so law enforcement can coordinate the medical response, the extent of any vehicle or property damage, and your contact information in case they need to contact you for additional details. Never leave the scene of an accident to notify law enforcement unless there is no means of communicating at the accident site. If you are unable to contact authorities, someone else at the scene should perform this task. Detail is important. Recording the information while it's still fresh in your mind is the best way to ensure your documentation is thorough and accurate. Some states require you to complete your documentation before you leave the scene of an accident, while others do not. Your company, law enforcement, and insurance companies will need as much information about the accident as possible. When documenting the accident, you should include the time and location of accident, description of damage to vehicles and property, name and address of all individuals involved, injuries or fatalities, description of the event, including weather and road conditions, name and address of insurance companies of all individuals involved, type, make, model, and license numbers of all vehicles involved, and names and departments of any investigating officers. Many motor carriers provide accident reporting kits in their trucks. These kits can be used to answer questions in a time when you may not be thinking straight. Also, drawing a simple sketch or diagram of the situation is a good idea. A camera or disposable camera may be the most useful item you can have at the scene. Taking pictures will help determine how an accident occurred and how much damage was involved. But you need to know what to photograph and what not to photograph. Take wide shots from the fog stripe at the edge of the road toward the point of impact, showing the final location of the vehicles. Take wide shots from the center line and all sides of the vehicles. Take close-up shots of damage and any skid marks or road debris. And never take pictures of individuals who have been injured or killed. As you're documenting the accident and taking pictures, don't put yourself in danger by wandering into traffic or getting in the way of law enforcement or medical responders. An accident is not only a stressful event in your life, but it can have a significant impact on your company as well. So, it's critical you notify your motor carrier of the accident as soon as possible and provide them with key information regarding the accident. Give them the same facts you included in your on-scene documentation. And if your company has any additional policies regarding accident procedures, be sure to follow those as well. Know whom to call in the event of an accident. These names and phone numbers should always be available, possibly posted in a single place in each cab. Follow all company rules, be cooperative, and answer all questions posed by the company representative, safety director, dispatcher. In some cases, the officer and your company will both require you to undergo post-accident drug and alcohol testing. Law enforcement may request testing as part of the investigation, or if required under state laws. Or your company will request testing to comply with the Department of Transportation, DOT, regulations. The post-accident alcohol test must be initiated by your motor carrier within 2 hours, but no later than 8 hours of the accident. A driver who is required to take a post-accident alcohol test may not use alcohol for 8 hours following the accident or until after the test, whichever comes first. Under the rules, the post-accident drug test must be administered within 32 hours. If you are subject to post-accident testing, you must remain available for testing. Not remaining available for testing is considered a refusal to test. A refusal to test is treated the same as failing an alcohol test or testing positive for drugs. Nothing in the regulations should delay medical attention for those who are injured or prohibit you from leaving the scene of the accident to get help in responding to the accident, or to seek emergency medical care for yourself. Your motor carrier must provide you with necessary post-accident information, procedures, and instructions before you can operate a CMV. This will ensure you are prepared in the event of an accident. The company representative will also direct you on how to handle a disabled or damaged CMV, towing, repair. If the vehicle is not disabled, the carrier may grant permission to drive the vehicle from the scene, providing it is given a thorough pre-trip inspection to ensure safety, to a repair station. A preliminary accident report is often used as part of a motor carrier's investigation into an accident. Depending on motor carrier policy, this type of report is completed by the driver or a representative of the motor carrier. Be polite and respectful at the accident scene. Note that anything said at the accident scene could be used against you and/or your motor carrier at a later date. You should not Discuss specific details of the accident with others at the scene. Volunteer unnecessary information. Admit fault and/or try to settle anything at the scene. That's the job of law enforcement, insurance representatives, and the motor carrier. To avoid problems after the accident, you should honestly answer questions asked by the law enforcement officials investigating the accident. Be factual. And never speculate or guess as to what may have caused the accident or who is at fault. When an accident or incident involves a hazardous material, there may be additional risks to safety, health, and the environment. Because of this, there are additional regulatory requirements that must be followed. If you haul hazardous materials, your employer must provide training to you on proper procedures for responding to leaks, spills, and other emergencies. If you are involved in an incident or accident, you must immediately report this to your company. Regulatory requirements and company policy will dictate how you handle the situation. At the very least, keep bystanders away from the area. If a hazardous material response team is called to the scene, follow their instructions. A vehicle fire can be a dangerous and frightening experience. Common sense, good driving habits, and good housekeeping can prevent many vehicle fires, but unfortunately, not all fires can be prevented. You need to be prepared to face this potentially dangerous situation. Fire is made possible by 4 components that are commonly referred to as the fire tetrahedron. The components represented by the 4-sided tetrahedron are oxygen, heat, fuel, and chemical chain reaction. Fire prevention revolves around keeping those elements from coming together. Without each of these 4 elements, fire, in most cases, cannot begin or continue. For example, if you don't allow enough heat to contact a fuel, you'll prevent fire. Or, if you use an extinguishing agent to stop the chemical chain reaction, you'll put out the fire. Since oxygen is almost always present in the air, this element of fire is also almost always present. Some sources of heat or ignition include open flames, lightning, smoking, hot surfaces, frictional heat, static electricity, and sparks. Given enough oxygen and heat, almost anything will burn. Fuel sources include solid materials like wood, cloth, paper, rubber, and plastics. Liquids that are flammable, such as gasoline, and gases like flammable gases and vapors. Once the chain reaction of fire begins, extinguishing the fire requires the interruption of the chain reaction. You can do this by denying the fire one of the other 3 elements: oxygen, heat, or fuel. Good housekeeping is important. In fact, it's one of the key strategies for fire prevention. The cab should be clean and free of debris at all times. The engine compartment should be checked regularly. The engine should always be clean. If oils or fluids are spilled on the engine, they should be wiped up immediately. After work is finished on the engine, all rags should be removed from the area, and all fluid caps should be put back where they belong. Regular checks should be made of the following items: wiring and electrical system, fuses, battery, and exhaust system. When refueling, the engine should be turned off and all smoking materials should be extinguished. The fuel tank should be checked for signs of leakage. Also, make sure you have metal-to-metal contact while fueling. Overheated tires are another way vehicle fires ignite. An underinflated tire can overheat, increasing the risk of a tire fire. A soft or flat tire should be changed as soon as possible. If a hot tire is changed, do not place it in the spare tire rack until it has cooled down. Brakes should also be checked regularly, as worn brakes can overheat, causing a fire. All brakes, including the parking brake, should be fully released before a vehicle is moved. Also, never ride the brakes. Riding the brakes can cause a fire in the brake linings that could spread to the tires. Periodically, check your mirrors looking for smoke. Smoking materials should never be used around a vehicle hauling hazardous materials or in the cargo area as freight is being loaded or unloaded. Know what commodities you are hauling. This information is important so you and/or emergency crews can respond properly. While all fires are made up of the same 4 elements, the specifics of each fire will differ, and the methods to fight these different fires will vary. Because of this, the National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA, has classified 4 general types of fires based on the combustible materials involved and the kind of extinguisher needed to put them out. The 4 fire classifications are A, B, C, and D. Each classification has a special symbol and color identification. Each portable fire extinguisher contains an extinguishing agent that eliminates the heat, fuel, or oxygen of a fire. The extinguishing agent depends on the class of fire it's meant to extinguish. The class of fire an extinguisher is used for is represented by letter symbols prominently displayed on the fire extinguisher. Fire extinguishers can be designed to suppress more than one type of fire. If this is the case, the extinguisher will be marked with all the applicable class labels. For example, A, B, C, or BC. A commonly found type of ABC extinguisher contains a dry powder extinguishing agent. Be sure to use fire extinguishers only on fires for which they were designed. Using the wrong agent on a fire may increase the intensity of the fire. Section 393.95 of the FMCSRs requires 1 or 2, depending on the rating, properly filled and readily accessible fire extinguishers on all CMVs. The extinguishers must be securely mounted on the vehicle and must be designed and maintained to visually show whether the extinguisher is fully charged. If a vehicle is hauling hazardous materials, it must be equipped with 1 fire extinguisher having an Underwriters Laboratories rating of 10 BC or more. If a vehicle is not hauling hazardous materials, it must be equipped with either 1 fire extinguisher having an Underwriters Laboratories rating of 5 BC or more, or 2 fire extinguishers, each with an Underwriters Laboratories rating of 4 BC or more. If there is wind, make sure you have the wind at your back. You don't want the contents of the fire extinguisher blowing back at you during discharge. And it helps you avoid smoke and fumes. The correct way to use a fire extinguisher is to position yourself about 8 to 10 feet from the fire and use a method called PASS. The acronym PASS stands for Pull the pin, standing back 8 to 10 feet from the fire. Aim at the base of the fire. Squeeze the handle to release the extinguishing agent, and sweep at the base of the fire with the extinguishing agent. You have to act fast when using a fire extinguisher because you only have a limited supply of extinguishing agent and operation time. Never aim high at the flames. It will not put out the fire, and you will waste your extinguishing agent. The first consideration when a fire occurs is your safety and the safety of others. If possible, Move the vehicle to a location away from other people, vehicles, and buildings. Getting the fire under control is the next step, but don't take unnecessary risks. If a fire is too large or dangerous to handle, leave it to the professionals. The following are basic steps to follow when dealing with a cab engine fire. Turn off the vehicle's engine. If you can do it safely, also look for fuel leaks. If the fire is electrical and it can be done safely, disconnect the battery cables from the terminals. Don't open the hood more than necessary when fighting an engine fire. Remember, air is one of the ingredients that will help fuel a fire. Remember, never use water on a petroleum-based fire. The use of water will cause a petroleum-based fire to spread. Follow the directions on the fire extinguisher. And never assume a fire is completely out. Fires often smolder, spark, and can reignite. Tire fires are hard to extinguish and are dangerous. This is due to the fact that tires are made of highly flammable material. A tire fire can generate an intense amount of heat. There are several things that should be kept in mind when fighting a tire fire. Remove the hot tire from the vehicle if you can do so safely, and use water to fight a tire fire. Water helps cool a tire as well as extinguish flames. Fire extinguishers are good at suppressing flames, but will not be able to put out a tire fire. In many cases, cargo fires are discovered by the sight or smell of smoke around cargo doors. There are several things to keep in mind when fighting a cargo fire. Do not open the doors if smoke is detected until the vehicle is in a safe place and help has arrived. Disconnect the tractor from the trailer, if possible, and move the tractor to a safe place away from the fire. And always know what type of cargo is in the trailer. This will help firefighters determine the safest way to extinguish the flames. You should now be able to describe actions you should take to help secure the scene if you have been involved in an accident. Discuss post-accident drug and alcohol testing. And explain procedures to follow in the event of a fire in the cab, engine, tires, or cargo of your vehicle, including how to use a fire extinguisher. Now that you've covered Now it's time to take the course exam. This exam includes 10 questions. Be aware, if you close the exam before finishing, your answers will not be saved. You may take this exam more than once. Your highest score will be reported.
To begin the course exam, select Next.